the echo inside. When Ethan turned 30, he thought he had finally escaped his past. His new apartment was quiet, his job stable, his circle small and calm. He told himself he was healed, mature, and in control of his emotions. But the silence of the night often betrayed him with strange memories. A child's voice would echo faintly in his mind, asking simple questions. "Why did you forget me, Ethan? Why do you keep locking the door?" He would shake his head, laugh nervously, and turn on the television. But that whisper never left, no matter how loud the world became. It followed him through meetings, through laughter, even through love. Every time someone raised their voice, the child inside him flinched. It was not visible to others, yet it shaped how he spoke and reacted. His therapist once said, "The child you were still lives in you today." But Ethan only smiled politely, thinking he had already outgrown pain. One morning, while walking to work, he saw a small boy crying alone. The boy's face reminded him of something too familiar to ignore. It was the same trembling lip, the same scared eyes, the same silence. Ethan froze in the middle of the street as his chest grew tight. For a brief second, time dissolved, and he was that boy again. His father's angry voice, his mother's silence, the breaking of glass. His breathing quickened as his adult world melted into fragments. A woman's voice called out, "Thank you for stopping. He's my son." Ethan nodded and forced a smile, pretending everything was normal. But something had shifted deep inside him, like a wound reopening. He felt the strange pull of emotions he thought he had buried forever. That night, he dreamed of a locked room inside his childhood home. Behind the door, he could hear knocking, soft but desperate. When he tried to open it, the handle burned hot like shame. He woke up sweating, trembling, unable to shake the image away. His reflection in the mirror looked both young and broken. In his eyes, he saw the same boy who once begged to be heard. Ethan realized he had spent years trying to silence that child. But pain ignored becomes pain repeated, and the inner child never dies. The question now whispered again, softer but clearer than before. "Will you finally listen to me now?" The mirror of memory. The next day, Ethan could not focus on anything at work. The image of that crying boy haunted his every thought. He tried to drown it with coffee, deadlines, and polite smiles. But every small sound reminded him of something buried long ago. A chair scraping the floor, a phone ringing, a door slamming shut. Each noise felt like a knock from the past, demanding attention. That night, he sat quietly in his apartment, staring at the wall. His phone buzzed with messages, but he ignored them all. The silence grew heavier until it felt almost alive. In that stillness, he heard faint laughter, a child's laughter. It was light, innocent, but carried an undertone of sorrow. He whispered, "What do you want from me?" And the laughter faded, replaced by the sound of soft crying. Ethan walked to his old photo box, hidden deep in a drawer. Dust covered the lid like a memory that never wanted to be touched. Inside were pictures of birthdays, smiles, and family dinners. But behind those frozen moments, he could feel the tension. His father's hand always resting too tightly on his shoulder. His mother's forced smiles that never reached her eyes. He picked up one picture, him as a small boy holding a red balloon. His eyes were wide but empty, as if he already knew too much. Ethan felt a lump in his throat, his chest tightening with guilt. He realized that child still waited for safety that never came, for love that always felt conditional, for comfort that was never safe. He whispered again, "I'm sorry I left you there." The next day, he visited his childhood home for the first time in years. It looked smaller, quieter, almost harmless from the outside. But the moment he stepped in, his body tensed like a reflex. Every corner seemed to breathe with ghosts of old emotions. His father's voice echoed faintly from nowhere, calling his name. "Ethan, don't cry. Be a man. Control yourself." His knees trembled as his inner child whispered, "I was just scared." He sat on the cold floor of his old room, closing his eyes. Suddenly, he saw himself as a boy again, sitting in front of him. The child looked at him with sadness and confusion. "You promised you'd never become like him," the boy said softly. Ethan wanted to speak, but his throat refused to move. Tears welled up as he reached forward, but the child stepped back. "You forgot me," the child whispered, "and I forgot how to trust." Ethan gasped and opened his eyes. The room silent again. His heart raced as he realized this was not madness. It was memory trying to heal itself through pain. His therapist's words echoed once more. Healing starts when you stop trying to silence the echo. That night, Ethan wrote in his journal for the first time in years. He didn't write goals or plans, only feelings he never dared to say. He wrote about fear, shame, rejection, and the desperate need to belong. The words flowed like confession, heavy but freeing. He ended the page with a simple sentence. "I hear you now, little one," and for the first time in a long while, the silence felt peaceful. Not empty, not haunting, just still. Somewhere deep inside, the child within smiled faintly, waiting, because healing had finally begun to whisper back. The room with 2 chairs. The next morning, Ethan booked a session with his old therapist. He felt nervous walking through the familiar hallway and pale lights. The waiting room smelled like citrus cleaner and a quiet rain. His hands shook, but his breathing stayed slow and steady. When the door opened, Dr. Leah smiled with warm patience. She said, "Welcome back, Ethan. You are right on time." They sat facing each other in a small, quiet room. 2 gray chairs, a wooden clock, and a soft lamp. Dr. Leah asked, "What brought you here today, Ethan?" He said, "The child in me keeps calling my name." She nodded, then said, "Good, let us invite him properly." She placed a second small cushion beside his feet. "This cushion is for your inner child," she explained calmly. "Imagine him sitting here, safe, seen, and not alone." Ethan swallowed and focused on the space by his shoes. In his mind, a boy appeared, knees tucked, eyes wary. Dr. Leah said, "Tell him he is welcome in this room." Ethan whispered, "You are welcome here. I will not leave." The clock ticked softly as the room became heavier. Ethan felt a flutter in his chest like soft wings. The boy glanced up, then looked down at his palms. Dr. Leah spoke gently. "Ask him what he needs right now," Ethan asked. "What do you need, little one? Please tell me." The boy answered, "I need you to stop pretending you are fine." The sentence hit like a bell, clear and impossible to ignore. Ethan nodded, tears warming his face. Nothing dramatic, just honest gravity. He said, "I've been brave by staying numb for years." Dr. Leah replied, "Numbness is armor, but armor grows heavy over years." She pointed to his breathing and invited his attention downward. "Notice your body," she said. "Where does the fear live?" His shoulders ached, his stomach clenched, his throat felt tight, he said. "The fear sits like a stone under my ribs." Dr. Leah said, "Place your hand there and breathe slowly, 4 counts. With each breath, imagine saying, 'I see you, I am here.'" Ethan breathed, steady and slow, while the boy watched carefully. A soft warmth began to loosen the stone beneath his ribs. Dr. Leah pulled a small mirror from the desk drawer. She placed it between the chairs, angled toward Ethan's face. She said, "Speak to yourself like you would to him. No judgment, only truth, only small steps and steady care." Ethan looked into the mirror and saw tired, kind eyes. He said, "I will not abandon you again, not anymore." The boy shifted closer, his shoulder touching Ethan's shin. Dr. Leah smiled and said, "Good, now we name patterns." She drew 3 circles on a notepad with a pen. "First circle," she said, "is the trigger that awakens memory. Second circle is the protective habit you learn to survive. Third circle is the cost you continue paying as an adult." Ethan thought about raised voices and the sudden cold silence. Trigger, a sharp tone, a slammed door, a disappointed face. Protective habit, do everything perfectly and disappear before conflict arrives. Cost, exhaustion, resentment, and relationships that never feel truly safe. He nodded slowly as the circles formed a quiet map. Dr. Leah asked him to write 1 sentence under each. He wrote, "Loud voices mean danger, even when danger is imaginary." He wrote, "I perform, I please, and I vanish to survive." He wrote, "The price is distance, loneliness, and recycled heartbreak." The boy on the cushion watched those words with care. Dr. Leah said, "Now add a 4th circle called new choice." New choice, pause, breathe, speak truth, and ask for safety. Ethan repeated those 4 words like a soft promise. "Pause, breathe, speak truth, and ask for safety," he said. The boy reached for his hand and squeezed once. Dr. Leah said, "You will practice this outside the office. Choose 1 situation this week and try the new circle." Ethan nodded, nervous, hopeful, and surprisingly strong inside. That evening, Maya called, a friend he kept carefully distant. She asked if he wanted dinner with a small group. Normally he would say yes, then feel trapped and silent. This time he paused and heard the boy whispering gently. Ethan said, "I would love to, but I need clarity first. Who will be there? How long? And can I leave early?" There was a short silence. Then Maya laughed kindly. She said, "Of course, thank you for asking like an adult. We will be 5 friends, 2 hours, and full permission to leave." Ethan felt something unlock, a small chain dropping quietly. He texted later, "I will come and thank you for clarity." The boy inside smiled and traced circles on the cushion. At dinner, the restaurant buzzed with voices and clinking glasses. A loud laugh at the next table startled his body. The old program tried to pull him back into freezing. "Pause," he told himself. "Breathe, count 4 in and 4 out." He placed a hand on his ribs below the table. "I am here," he whispered inward. "You are safe with me." Maya noticed his stillness and asked if he was okay. Ethan said, "Loud sounds make me tense, but I am all right." She nodded, placed her glass down softly, and changed the topic. The boy inside relaxed, surprised that truth did not break anything. The evening moved gently, simple stories and warm, small moments. When he left early, nobody punished him, nobody withdrew love. Back home, he wrote about the 4 circles in detail. He added a 5th quiet practice called repair and reparent. Repair meant apologizing to himself for years of silence. Reparent meant offering comfort, structure, play, and honest boundaries daily. He listed 4 small rituals: morning check-in and evening breath. 3 warm phrases: "You are safe," "You are loved," "You belong." He made a small corner in his living room comforting. A soft blanket, a tiny lamp, a notebook, 2 stones. 1 stone was smooth to carry during anxious mornings. The other stone stayed home as a symbol of return. He told the boy, "When I leave, I will always return." The boy nodded, then tucked the smooth stone into Ethan's pocket. Days passed, and small changes began to collect like rain. Ethan noticed he could ask for time before deciding. He said no without long explanations, then breathed and stayed present. He ate slower, slept deeper, and woke without the dread. The nightmares faded into simple dreams holding ordinary rooms. The locked door still appeared, but the handle cooled gently. One afternoon, his father called without warning or clear purpose. The old panic flickered, quick and familiar in his chest. "Pause, breathe," he reminded himself, then answered with steady kindness. His father spoke with the same clipped tone as always. Ethan kept his voice warm, slow, and carefully boundaried. He said, "I can talk for 10 minutes, then I must go." His father hesitated, then agreed, and the conversation stayed contained. When the call ended, Ethan sat very still and listened. Inside, the boy was standing, not crouching, not hiding anymore. He said, "You kept me safe," while speaking truth to him. Ethan replied, "I will keep doing that again and again." The boy smiled and opened his small hand to show something. It was a tiny paper key folded from an old drawing. The drawing showed a room with stars painted on walls. The key belonged to the locked door from his dreams. Ethan took the key and felt a soft warmth spreading. Dr. Leah had said, memory often returns gifts when trusted. Tonight, he decided, he would visit the dream with care. He made tea and dimmed the lights in his room. He placed both stones on the floor by his bed. He wrote 3 sentences in his journal before sleeping. "I will meet you kindly. I will move slowly. I will listen." Then he lay down, breathed evenly, and welcomed the dark. Sleep gathered around him like a safe and steady tide. In the dream, he stood again in the old hallway. The locked door waited at the end like a question. The handle no longer burned. It only hummed with warmth. The boy stood beside him, holding the paper key. Ethan knelt and said, "We only go if you want." The boy nodded and placed the key in his palm. Ethan turned the handle and opened the door an inch. A soft light poured out, smelling like rain and soap. They stepped inside and saw a small desk and window. On the desk, a single note written in careful letters. It said, "You survived by leaving, you will heal by returning." The boy pointed to a drawer, and Ethan pulled it open. Inside lay 3 objects: a red balloon, a tiny whistle, and a folded letter with his childhood handwriting on it. He unfolded the letter slowly, his hands steady and sure. "Dear future me," it began, "please keep me safe. Teach me to speak, play with me, and stay. I will be brave if you promise not to vanish." Ethan looked at the boy and placed a hand gently. "I promise," he said, the words simple and binding. The room brightened, and the window opened to a soft breeze. He pocketed the whistle and tied the balloon to the chair. The letter he placed against his heart like a shield. The door did not close behind them. It stayed open. He woke before dawn with tears and a quiet smile. The stone in his pocket felt warm like afternoon sunlight. He texted Dr. Leah. "I visited the room and returned." She replied, "Good work. Repeat the visit until the fear softens. Remember, healing is repetition with safety, not single dramatic moments." He nodded to the morning light and the kettle's gentle song. Before leaving for work, he stood by the living room corner. He told the boy, "Choose one small joy for today. Anything." The boy said, "Can we eat strawberries slowly and take the long route?" Ethan laughed softly and said, "Yes, we can do that." Then he added, "And tonight we will practice the new circle. Pause, breathe, speak truth, and ask for safety, again and again." Outside, the city moved with buses, footsteps, and ordinary weather. Ethan carried the smooth stone and the tiny paper key. The echo inside no longer begged, it walked beside him. He felt the difference. Not perfect, but steady and faithful. The future did not feel like a test, it felt spacious, and the boy within looked up and whispered, "I trust you." The return to the mirror. A week passed, and Ethan's world began to feel both lighter and stranger. Small moments of calm surprised him, like sunlight sneaking through old curtains. He no longer woke with panic, though the nights still held quiet whispers. He began to sense that the child inside him was not only healing, he was guiding, teaching, and testing how deep Ethan's compassion could go. Dr. Leah suggested they try an exercise called the mirror return. She said, "This time you will face yourself completely, not as child and adult, but as one being divided by years of survival." Ethan nodded slowly, unsure if he was ready, yet drawn to the idea. She told him, "Bring the paper key, the stone, and the letter next time. These objects will help you bridge the symbolic and the real." The next evening, he sat once again in her quiet therapy room. Soft rain tapped against the window, rhythmic and soothing. Dr. Leah dimmed the lights, leaving only the small lamp between them. She placed the mirror on the floor, facing upward, reflecting the ceiling light. "Sit above it," she said. "Breathe slowly, and imagine both of you inside it. No boundaries now, no protector, no child, just truth." Ethan looked down and saw both faces blur together in the reflection. The boy's frightened eyes and his own weary gaze overlapped. The mirror shimmered faintly, as if recognizing them at last. Dr. Leah whispered, "Say what you never said when you were small." Ethan's throat tightened, his body trembling under invisible weight. He whispered, "I was scared. I was hurt. And I thought it was my fault." His reflection blinked, and suddenly he saw tears on the boy's cheeks. The child said, "I waited so long for you to say that." Ethan nodded, breathing through waves of grief and relief. Dr. Leah said, "Stay with it. Feel the shaking. Let it move through you." His body convulsed gently, like a storm leaving after years of silence. It was not pain this time. It was release disguised as trembling. When the trembling stopped, Dr. Leah asked softly, "Now what do you need?" Ethan replied, "I need to forgive myself for surviving by forgetting." She said, "Then say it, and mean it with your whole body." He said, "I forgive you, Ethan, for leaving me behind when you had to. I forgive you for choosing silence when words were too dangerous." The reflection smiled, faint and peaceful, like a candle finally steady. Dr. Leah wrote something quietly in her notebook. Then she said, "The final stage of this healing is reparenting through action. Love without proof, care without reward, and rest without guilt. You must live the life that child once needed to see." Ethan asked, "How will I know if I am doing it right?" She smiled. "You will feel ease instead of tension, flow instead of control." Later that night, Ethan walked home through wet streets glimmering under lamps. He passed a playground closed for the night, empty and silent. He stopped and stood by the swing set, rain tapping his shoulders softly. In his mind, he saw the child sitting there, waiting patiently. Ethan walked closer, crouched down, and said, "I came back," as promised. The boy smiled and said, "Then swing with me, even if only once." They swung together, slow at first, then higher, laughing between breaths. Each arc felt like a small prayer, like reclaiming lost seconds of joy. Rainwater splashed on his face, mixing with tears he didn't hide. He whispered, "I am not ashamed anymore. I am not broken." The boy looked at him and said, "Then you are ready for the next door." Ethan asked, "What door?" But the boy only smiled and vanished in mist. The next morning, Ethan found an old notebook under his bed. It wasn't the one he used now. It was from his teenage years. The cover was torn, the pages filled with messy drawings and lyrics. He flipped through them until he found something that froze him, a sketch of a door with stars carved around the frame. Beneath it, a note in his own handwriting said, "When you remember, return." He stared at those words for a long time, feeling both awe and clarity. He realized healing wasn't about fixing something broken. It was about returning to something sacred that never truly left. He closed the notebook and sat quietly in the morning light. His phone buzzed, Maya texting, "How are you feeling today?" He replied, more real than before, like the fog is lifting slowly. In the following days, Ethan began living differently, almost ritualistically. He ate breakfast near sunlight, not his phone. He spoke slower, smiled more gently, and allowed silence to stay. When irritation rose, he paused and asked himself, "What is this protecting?" Most times the answer was fear, not anger. And instead of fighting it, he placed his hand on his ribs and breathed. One evening, while meditating, he felt something shift deeply inside. It was not dramatic, no visions or voices, just quiet expansion. He sensed that the inner child was no longer separate or waiting. They had merged, like two rivers finding the same sea. For the first time, he did not feel like healing. He simply felt whole. And in that stillness, he whispered, "Thank you for staying with me." The dream returned that night, but it was different now. The locked door was wide open and light filled every corner. The room no longer felt like a memory. It felt like home. On the desk sat a mirror with no reflection, only clear light. When he looked into it, he saw the world, moving, living, breathing. The boy's voice spoke softly. "You are not me anymore. You are us." Ethan smiled and reached out to touch the mirror. It rippled gently, and he felt warmth spread through his fingertips. A sensation of peace, not from forgetting, but from integration. The child's laughter echoed faintly, but this time, it came from within. Dr. Leah's words lingered. Healing is not the end, it is reunion, and Ethan finally understood what that meant. The next morning, he woke early and watched the sun rise. The light touched his face, and for once, he didn't look away. The paper key sat on his desk beside the smooth stone. He didn't need them anymore, yet he didn't want to let them go. Some things, he thought, stay not as tools, but as reminders. Reminders that even wounds, when held with love, become wisdom. He whispered to himself, "You are safe. You are seen. You belong." And for the first time, those words didn't sound like hope. They sounded like truth. The child becomes the guide days turned into weeks, and the calm inside Ethan began to feel natural. Not perfect, not constant, but steady, like a tide that finally knew rhythm. He no longer searched for peace like a lost object. It simply arrived whenever he allowed space for it to exist. The boy within had grown quieter, not because he vanished, but because he had finally been heard. Dr. Leah called their next session a closure circle. She said, "Every healing journey ends by becoming a new beginning. You will now learn to live without waiting for pain to speak first." Ethan nodded, curious, a little nervous, but ready. She placed a blank page on the table and drew a single circle. Inside it, she wrote one word, presence. She said, "This is the final stage, Ethan, the practice of staying. Not fixing, not avoiding, not explaining, just staying. When the inner child no longer hides, the adult no longer runs. You live from the same heart that once needed saving. Ethan felt a deep stillness spread through his chest, as if his breath itself understood those words before his mind did. That evening, he took a long walk through the city after sunset. The air was cool, filled with distant traffic and faint laughter. He passed a park where a group of children were playing tag. One of them tripped, scraped his knee, and started to cry. A woman rushed over, knelt, and whispered something gentle. The boy's tears slowed, his small body relaxing into safety. Ethan watched quietly from the sidewalk, a strange warmth rising in him. It reminded him of something he once wished to feel. Someone arriving before the pain became unbearable. For the first time, instead of sadness, he felt gratitude. He whispered, "Someone got it right this time," and smiled softly. Then he turned toward home, feeling lighter than he had in years. Later that night, he opened his journal and wrote a letter, not to his past self, but to the boy who once saved him. He wrote, "You taught me how to love without permission. You showed me that healing is not loud, it's quiet understanding. You made me realize I was never broken, only scared." And at the end, he signed it, "With love, your future that finally arrived." When he finished, he placed the letter beside the paper key and the stone. He didn't cry. The tears had already done their work long ago. Instead, he felt a pulse of calm that reached deep into his spine. It was the feeling of safety that needed no proof, the feeling he once believed could never belong to him. He whispered, "You can rest now, little one. I'll take it from here." A few days later, Ethan returned to therapy for what felt like the last time. Dr. Leah asked, "Do you feel complete or just calm for now?" He smiled. "I feel whole, not finished, but whole." She nodded, then said, "That means the healing is working through you now. The child no longer needs rescuing. He has become your intuition. You can trust him, especially when life becomes confusing again." Ethan asked, "How will I know if I'm slipping back into old wounds?" She said, "You'll know by how you speak to yourself. When you use fear's language, you'll feel smaller. When you use truth's language, you'll feel grounded. Your tone toward yourself will always reveal who's leading, the wound or the wisdom." He wrote that sentence down in his notebook and underlined it twice. That night, he dreamed again, but this time it wasn't the house. He was walking through an open field under a golden sky. The boy was there, older now, maybe 12 or 13. His hair moved with the wind, his eyes calm and bright. Ethan smiled and said, "You've grown, haven't you?" The boy nodded. "You too, but differently." They walked together toward a small lake reflecting the sunset. The water shimmered like glass, and at the center floated the red balloon. Ethan laughed softly. "I remember this," he said. The boy replied, "Yes, but it's yours now, not mine." He picked up the balloon's string and handed it to Ethan. "You don't need to chase healing anymore. You are healing." Ethan took the balloon and felt its weightless pull against the wind. The boy smiled, then slowly began to fade into the golden air. Ethan didn't panic this time. He only placed his hand over his heart. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for staying long enough to teach me love." And the boy's voice echoed one last time. "Good. Now go live it." When Ethan woke up, sunlight filled his entire room. He opened his window and let the morning breeze rush in. The stone on his desk gleamed faintly as if warmed from within. He held it once, then placed it in the garden below his window. No ceremony, no music, just quiet gratitude. Some things, he thought, must return to the earth once they've done their work. Weeks passed, and Ethan started volunteering at a local community center. He helped children paint, write stories, and talk about their feelings. One girl asked him, "Why do grown-ups forget what it's like to be small?" He smiled and said, "Some forget because they never felt safe enough to remember." She thought for a moment, then asked, "And you? Did you forget?" He replied, "I remembered just in time." Every evening when the center closed, he'd walk home under streetlights. He'd think about the quiet lessons pain had left behind. That fear doesn't disappear, it transforms when met with kindness. That the past doesn't vanish, it integrates when held with honesty. And that peace isn't found outside, it's built slowly, breath by breath. Each step he took felt like a small prayer whispered to his younger self. One night, while journaling, he wrote something new on the final page. Healing is not a finish line. It's a friendship with your own heart. He closed the notebook and blew out the candle beside him. The silence that filled the room was no longer haunting. It was gentle, alive, and deeply familiar, like homecoming. And somewhere deep inside, the inner child whispered, "We made it." The peace that remembers, months passed, and Ethan's life began to flow with a quiet rhythm. His mornings were simple, filled with sunlight, tea, and slow breathing. His evenings were calm, marked by small reflections and handwritten notes. He no longer felt the constant need to fix himself. Instead, he lived as someone who had finally made peace with his shadows. He had learned that healing wasn't about perfection. It was about presence. One Sunday afternoon, he visited the small park near his apartment. It was filled with laughter, people reading, and the rustle of leaves. He sat on a bench, feeling the softness of wind across his skin. A little boy ran past him, chasing a red balloon that slipped free. Ethan smiled as the balloon floated upward, sunlight catching its surface. Something about that image felt like the closing of a circle. He reached into his pocket and found a folded note. It was the same letter he once wrote to his inner child. The paper had softened from being carried so long. He unfolded it slowly and read it again, each word no longer heavy but warm and alive. It ended with the same line, "Your future that finally arrived." A woman sat down beside him, holding her young daughter's hand. She glanced at the balloon drifting higher and said, "Funny how kids never cry when balloons fly away." Ethan smiled and replied, "Maybe they trust the sky more than we do." The woman laughed quietly, her daughter tugging at her sleeve. The simple moment reminded him that connection didn't need effort. Later that week, Ethan returned to see Dr. Leah one last time. She greeted him with her familiar gentle smile. "You've come a long way," she said. "How does it feel?" He thought for a moment, then said, "It feels like silence, without fear." She nodded, then handed him his old file from the cabinet. "You can take this," she said. "You don't need it anymore." He looked through the notes, the progress charts, the scribbles. He saw his first words written years ago. "I don't know who I am." Then he flipped to the last page where Dr. Leah had written one sentence. "The boy is safe, the man is kind, the heart is whole." He smiled, folded the file, and thanked her for helping him return home. As he left the office, the hallway didn't feel narrow anymore. On his way back, rain began to fall. Light, steady, cleansing. He didn't rush for cover, he just kept walking. Each drop felt like a reminder that pain too can fall gently when accepted. For years, rain had made him anxious, reminding him of lonely nights. But now it simply felt like part of the world, and part of him. He whispered, "You see, we made it through the storm after all." That night he dreamed again, for the last time. In the dream, he stood in the same open field as before. But now there were no locked doors, no whispers, no shadows. Only a wide horizon painted in gold and quiet wind. The boy stood far ahead, older now, almost his age. He turned, smiled, and said, "You can stop searching. We're already home." Ethan walked toward him, but as he did, the boy faded into light. It wasn't sadness, it was completion. Their souls had merged so gently that there was no separation left. And in that final moment, he heard the echo of his own voice saying, "I forgive you, I love you, and I will never leave again." The dream dissolved into a peaceful white, soft as morning light. He woke with tears on his face, but a calm heart. He didn't rush to write it down or analyze what it meant. Some truths, he realized, are not meant to be studied, only lived. He brewed his tea, opened the window, and let sunlight fill the room. His life was no longer about escaping the past. It was about walking beside it, hand in hand without fear. As weeks passed, small traces of his old pain appeared sometimes. A familiar tone of voice, a sudden flash of memory, a cold silence. But instead of running, he met them with breath and kindness. He whispered, "I remember you, but you don't control me anymore." And every time, the weight melted a little faster, leaving behind peace. His healing had become a daily conversation, not an ending, but a rhythm. One day, while teaching children to paint at the community center, A little boy accidentally spilled a cup of red paint on the floor. He froze, afraid, whispering, "I'm sorry. Please don't be mad." Ethan knelt beside him and smiled softly. "It's okay. Accidents happen." He handed the boy a towel and helped him clean the floor. The child looked up and said, "You sound like my dad when he's calm." Ethan paused, his chest warm with quiet emotion. He realized in that instant what full-circle healing truly meant. He had become the voice he once needed to hear, not just for himself, but for the world around him. He wasn't chasing peace anymore. He was offering it. And that, he thought, was the real end of pain. That night, he sat by his window with a single candle burning. He looked at the empty space on his desk where the stone once sat. The paper key, the letter, and the notebook were gone too. He didn't need reminders anymore. He had become the lesson. Outside, the city lights shimmered like tiny stars in motion. He whispered into the quiet, "Thank you for teaching me how to return." The flame flickered gently as he closed his eyes. The room around him glowed with warmth, soft and sacred. He felt the same peace he once searched for in others. Only now it came from within, steady as breath and eternal as memory. And somewhere deep inside, a voice spoke one last time. You didn't just heal. You remembered who you were before the hurt.